Imagine this. You are a German soldier. You've marched across the sands of North Africa, battled across the hedgerows of Normandy, or fought desperately on the Italian front. You've been told all your life that America is decadent, heartless, and merciless. Nazi propaganda painted the United States as a place of racial chaos, soulless capitalism, and cruelty. You were warned. If captured, you would face beatings, starvation, or worse. Now imagine the moment of surrender. Your weapon is gone, your uniform torn, your comrades scattered. You are herded onto a ship, bound across the Atlantic. Fear grips your chest. You don't know if you'll ever see your homeland again. And then, you step off the transport and into a prison camp in Texas, or Georgia, or Iowa. You expect shackles, dogs, and humiliation. Instead, you are greeted by something entirely different. A clean bed, freshly laundered clothes, 3 meals a day, music floating from radios in the distance, and perhaps most astonishing of all, something you never dreamed would be handed to you as a prisoner of war. A cold bowl of vanilla ice cream. A bottle of Coca-Cola. For many German POWs in the United States during World War II, this was not a dream. It was reality. Their disbelief was recorded in diaries, letters, and later memoirs. In captivity, many of these soldiers tasted not punishment, but comfort. Not deprivation, but abundance. This is the forgotten story of how German prisoners of war lived inside American prison camps, how they reacted to Coca-Cola and ice cream, and how, in the most unlikely of ways, captivity on foreign soil changed the way they saw the world forever. World War II produced unimaginable suffering. Across Europe and Asia, battlefields were littered with destruction. Famine stalked civilian populations, and millions of soldiers were marched off to captivity. In many parts of the world, prison camps meant misery, hunger, and brutality. But in the United States, things were different. From 1942 to 1946, over 370,000 German POWs were transported across the Atlantic and housed in camps across America. From the deserts of Arizona to the plains of Nebraska, from the deep south to the far west coast, America built a vast network of facilities to hold its captured enemy. By the rules of the 1929 Geneva Convention, prisoners of war were entitled to humane treatment, shelter, food, medical care, and basic dignity. But America went far beyond the letter of the law. In fact, many German POWs were shocked to discover that their daily meals in captivity were better than what some civilians at home were eating in Germany. Even some American civilians living under strict rationing looked at the prisoners' plates and shook their heads in disbelief. German soldiers were astonished to find not only bread, meat, and butter on their trays, but often dessert, pie, pudding, or ice cream. For men who had endured years of hunger, this was not just food. It was a revelation. And then came Coca-Cola. In wartime Germany, Coca-Cola was nearly impossible to find. Imports of the syrup had dried up, and the Nazis had even created a substitute drink called Fanta, because the real thing was cut off. But in America, Coca-Cola flowed like water. To sit under the hot sun of Texas or Oklahoma, sipping the same drink American guards enjoyed, was something German prisoners never forgot. In their letters home, many POWs described America as a land of paradox, an enemy country that treated them better than their own government had. For some, it sparked confusion. For others, admiration. And for many, it was the first seed of doubt about everything they had been taught under Hitler's regime. This is where our story begins. To understand the surreal experience of German POWs in the United States, we must step back to the early years of the war. In 1942, after the Allied victory in North Africa, tens of thousands of German soldiers, Rommel's Afrika Korps, were captured. Britain was already overwhelmed with prisoners. Europe was a battlefield, and the safest place to hold such large numbers was across the ocean. So the United States began shipping prisoners by the thousands. They crossed the Atlantic in convoys, often in the same ships that carried American troops in the opposite direction. Guards reported that many Germans expected a death sentence on arrival. Nazi propaganda had convinced them that Americans were barbarians. Some even feared lynching by civilians once they stepped onto U.S. soil. Instead, they were processed into camps built with surprising efficiency. By the war's end, there were over 500 prisoner-of-war camps spread across 46 states. Some were massive, like the one at Fort Leonard Wood in Missouri. Others were small branch camps located near farms, factories, and sawmills. Each camp had barbed wire and watchtowers. But inside, life was remarkably structured and even humane. Prisoners received uniforms marked with PW. They slept in clean barracks with heating in the winter. They had libraries, classrooms, workshops, even orchestras. But the greatest shock came in the mess hall. Life inside the camps became, for many German soldiers, an education in American culture. Some camps held movie nights where Hollywood films were shown. Others allowed prisoners to form choirs, perform Beethoven, or even stage plays. But food remained at the heart of their experience. Imagine being a young man from rural Bavaria, captured in Tunisia. You'd grown up eating bread crusts and potatoes. Suddenly, in Texas, you're handed a tray: roast beef, mashed potatoes, peas, a slice of bread, butter, and a scoop of vanilla ice cream. For dessert, a slice of apple pie. And alongside it, a Coca-Cola bottle, sweating with condensation in the heat. Prisoners wrote that they couldn't believe it. Some thought it was a trick. Others refused at first, suspicious. But soon, many admitted they had never eaten so well in their lives. One POW later recalled, "It was unbelievable. Ice cream was something we knew only from stories. And Coca-Cola? We thought it was a legend. Yet here we were, prisoners, and it was given to us as if we were guests." American farmers also grew accustomed to working with German POW labor. During harvest seasons, prisoners were sent out under guard to pick cotton, harvest corn, or work sawmills. They were paid small wages in camp currency. And during breaks, farmers often shared soft drinks with them, Coca-Cola among them. Many German soldiers described these moments of unexpected humanity as life-changing. Of course, not everything was idyllic. Camps had discipline. Escape attempts occurred, though few succeeded. Political tensions sometimes flared. Hardcore Nazis clashed with fellow prisoners who admired America. But overall, records show remarkably peaceful relations. What stunned the Germans most was the contradiction. How could an enemy treat them this well? How could the decadent America they had been warned about provide not just shelter, but kindness? The real turning point for many POWs came not in a single event, but in a gradual realization. Nazi propaganda had taught them that America was corrupt, brutal, and in decline. Yet here, in captivity, they saw freedom, prosperity, and opportunity. They listened to American radio. They read books in the camp libraries. They learned English. And yes, they tasted Coca-Cola and ice cream, symbols of abundance that Germany could not provide. Slowly, loyalties shifted. Some prisoners began to question Hitler's promises. Others dreamed of returning after the war, not to Germany, but to America. A few even volunteered to help the U.S. war effort in propaganda campaigns against the Nazis. Captivity, combined with simple comforts, eroded ideology more powerfully than any battlefield. When the war ended, the camps began to close. By 1946, most German POWs had been shipped back across the Atlantic. But they did not leave unchanged. Many returned to a shattered Germany, where food was scarce, cities lay in ruins, and survival was uncertain. Letters and memoirs reveal that countless former POWs told their families unbelievable stories of kindness in America, of clean barracks, of plentiful meals, of Coca-Cola and ice cream. Their families often thought it was exaggeration, but it was true. In the decades that followed, thousands of former POWs emigrated back to the United States. Some became farmers, some mechanics, some teachers. Many carried lifelong gratitude for how they had been treated. For them, their first taste of America had been behind barbed wire, yet it left them longing to return. In the end, the story of German POWs in America is more than a curiosity about ice cream and Coca-Cola. It is a window into the contradictions of war. On the battlefields, young men killed one another with merciless efficiency. But in the camps, far from the front lines, there were moments of unexpected humanity. A guard sharing a cigarette, a farmer handing over a Coke, a camp cook dishing out ice cream on a sweltering summer day. For men who had been taught to hate, these small gestures carried enormous weight. They revealed a truth no propaganda could hide, that dignity, kindness, and abundance were stronger than fear. The legacy of these prison camps remains a quiet but profound chapter of history. America's treatment of its German prisoners helped lay a foundation for reconciliation after the war. It showed the world that even in the fiercest conflict, humanity could prevail. For the German soldiers who lived it, the memory never faded. They remembered the sound of jukeboxes, the sight of Coca-Cola bottles, the taste of ice cream on a hot summer day. They remembered that their first true glimpse of freedom came not in their homeland, but in the custody of their enemy. And perhaps that is the greatest irony of all, that in defeat they discovered something far more powerful than victory. Thank you for joining us in uncovering this forgotten story. If you found this documentary compelling, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. There are many more stories from history that reveal not just the battles fought, but the humanity discovered along the way.